Resonance podcast, a world of meaningful conversations, a tapestry of culture, and a symphony of creativity. In our episodes, we embark on a journey through the rich landscapes of arts and culture, where we uncover the stories and passions that shape our world. We delve deep into matters concerning inspiration to lead a better life. We also let the enchanting melodies of the world of music serenade our senses, transcending boundaries and connecting hearts. Join us on this exploration of knowledge, inspiration, and the human spirit. This is the podcast where ideas flourish and the joy of discovery awaits.
By that stage in life, I felt like I was working toward greatness. There were situations that arose, and most of them got a reply or reaction that surprised me. I started to be more aware of what was happening around me. I became slow to react, if I reacted at all. But the anger inside of me was growing. I was allowing some things to fester, and it wasn't good for my health. I was still praying, and things were still hard, but I refused to give up on my prayer this time. I was determined to trust God. I was in this marriage feeling stuck. My job was horrible. My health was taking a toll on me. My daughter was having the hardest time in school, and I wanted to give up. I wanted to go back to the old me because it seemed to work better. The Christian thing wasn't happening, but I pushed through. There was frustration, lots of anger, lots of tears, but I kept pushing and I kept praying until something happened.
And so welcome to episode 3 of the Reflective Resonance podcast. My name is Daryl Clark, and happy to have with me today Miss Shayorka Robertson. Shayorka and I have, she's a longtime friend of mine. First met when we were working in the education field. Matter of fact, I believe she's still working in the education field. And, we've just, kept in contact, socially for the last probably going on close to almost 10 years now.
Right.
I think I met you back in 2015. And you were teaching second grade, was it? First grade?
Probably. Not sure.
I think it was, I want to say it was second grade. Before we actually get into the book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you stated, I am an educator. I've been an educator for many years. I've taught all grade levels, I believe. I started in middle school and decided that wasn't for me. Mm-hmm. So I teach the little people. I love education. However, I love writing too. So hopefully it'll find its happy medium. I am also a certified life coach. Okay. So I do a lot of coaching. Preferably, I do a lot of planning coaching where I help people plan pretty much their life, mm-hmm. or help them meet the goals that they're trying to get in life. And that gives me a lot of joy, just seeing people win. I also do this thing called 12 weeks of planned encounters with God. I facilitate, and it really helps people to find themselves in their religion, mm-hmm. or find themselves in their faith walk, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff going on, but this is my baby right here.
This is your baby. But today we're here to talk about your latest book entitled Loss, Pain, and Finding Peace. Is this your first book?
This is my first book.
Okay.
But it is not my last. And I forgive you for that because you read my book. It was the first male to read my book and give me a review. So I forgive you for calling it Love because I thought it should have been Love too.
Okay.
Maybe that's the title of the second book.
So now I got to understand who changed it to Loss.
The way I got this title...
Let's not get anybody in trouble, though.
No, we won't. The way I got this title is crazy because I was checking out of a store. I was in a checkout line of the store, And this is not the original title that I had. The original title that I had for this book was God Loved Me From Ordinary to Extraordinary.
Okay.
My Journey to Greatness. And I was gung-ho on that title. And I was checking out a grocery store, and I don't remember, I saw something, and it just like, the title just dropped in my spirit. And I was like, I'm going to run it by the publisher and see. Right? So she was like, I love it. I love it. Because the manuscript was already written. So because she had already read the manuscript, she felt like it fit better with the book. And the more I said it, the more it resonated with me.
Okay.
So, reflective.
So loss, pain, and finding peace.
Yes.
Without sharing the entire book and giving the content of the book away, can you tell us a little bit about what is in the book? What does it cover? Who were some of your target audiences? That kind of thing.
Well, let's start with my target audience, right? So when I was writing the book, I was writing the book for women, right? I set out to write the book for women. And as I was writing the book and things were coming up, I was like, oh, this is going to be good for young women. And I was like, oh, this is going to be good for adolescents, like those teenage girls and the peer pressure. So that's where I was focused. But as I kept writing and it was just coming out, I was like, this book going to be for everybody. And I was like, I don't know, like, would men buy it, right? So I was kind of hesitant about that. But when you was like, I'll buy your book and I'm going to read it, and I was like, don't just buy it, read it. So when you said, I'm going to buy your book and I'm going to read it, and you actually read it and gave me your feedback, like, it made me feel good, because I didn't think men would get anything from the book. But I tried to be as transparent in the book, because we all go through the same things.
Absolutely. And the way that I read it and received it was from obviously the basis of being a man, and how to treat women, how to treat, I have 2 daughters, how to treat my daughters, spousal relationships, girlfriend relationships, whatever the case may be. So it kind of, I gleaned a lot from that aspect of it. But I'm always trying to better myself and try to find out anything that I learn, I try to, pass it down, or spread it around however I can. A lot of people that follow me on social media would probably say, wow, he's, into everything, and that's not true. But if I see something and I know that's going to help, either help, a planner, event planner, or whatever the case may be, I don't mind sharing it. You know what I mean? Or if it's something like this, something, like your book, then I know that it'll, touch somebody's heart. I don't mind, you know what I mean, sharing it. And so that's a lot about why I chose to do this Reflective Resonance podcast. Talk to us a little bit about the book. What are some of the content in the book? Again, without, of course, giving away the entire story, but if we were, talking to an audience, can you kind of summarize the book?
Oh, it's a book of overcoming. If I had to summarize the book, it's a book of healing. It's a book of fighting back. It's a book of wanting to be a better version of myself. And in the book, I tell you how I got over. And I try to give some principles and some examples of things that I did, some things I identified within myself as I went through the healing process, because writing the book was the healing process.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So approximately how long did it take you to actually write the book?
You want me to lie to you or tell you the truth?
Please tell me the truth. We're all God-fearing people.
So years ago, God told me to write this book. Like, when I say years ago, like 7 years ago. And probably 5 years ago, I started writing it. And after I started writing it, because it got hard, I put it down. And I put it down and it sat for a couple years. And God said, now it's time, like 2 years later. So it took me approximately from beginning to end, really focused, 3 years.
About 3 years.
Yes.
But the original concept came up as far back as 7 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say it took me still 3 years because it still was a hard book to write.
Mm-hmm. Simply because of you're telling your personal story.
Right.
Of obviously the things that you lost, the pain that you went through, and then, like you said, overcoming all of that. And so congratulations on obviously the book, but really and truly congratulations on overcoming.
Thank you.
And actually healing.
Thank you.
Because so oftentimes, people that look like me and you, we get into our situations and for whatever reason, we don't know how to get ourselves out of it.
Right.
Clearly, you are a prime example of what it looks like to go through something and to be on the other side.
Right. Well, let me say this. First, it was a decision. Right? It started with a decision. The decision was, do you want to stay here or do you want to go through? And I ain't gonna lie. Sometimes when I was telling the story, I said, I don't want to go through. I'm gonna stay over here because it felt good over here. But I knew that me pushing through, I knew that me going to the other side was better, but it was also scary of the uncertainty.
I can see that. Yeah, I can, because it's what you're used to.
Right.
Right. In layman's terms, we call that working out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? And again, but that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of people that look like me and you who don't, for whatever reason, move out of their comfort zone.
Right.
It's okay here. And it is what it is. A lot of the work that I do in my primary job is I work with people with, social struggles. And you talk to them and it's like, you're trying to help them. You're trying to show them the way. You're trying to give them goals, give them ways to, get out of their situation. But for some reason, they fall right back into the same rut that they were in.
Right.
And when you look at it, it's because they're scared. Yeah. They're scared to, better themselves because it's comfortable over here. Right. I'm being taken care of over here. Over on the other side, it's not necessarily guaranteed. Right. You get what I'm saying? So, regarding the book, what is your favorite chapter in the book?
So, it's funny. My Greatest Lost is my favorite chapter of the book. And so much happened in My Greatest Lost. But the part that I cherish the most is the fact I was able to write about losing a child and not crying anymore. And it let me know that I was healing from that trauma. Like I was on because healing is a journey, right? There's no destination. You're going to always be healing from something. But when you can talk about something and you don't cry anymore or you don't get emotional, like you still feel something, but there's no tears or sorrow or whatever, or regret, or when I was able to tell that story without crying, I was like, Oh my God. That was amazing.
Okay. I noticed as I was reading the book, I think it was at the end of every chapter, there's some lines there.
Yes.
Can you tell us what was your thinking for leaving the lines there?
So at the end of every chapter, I wanted to give people a space to go back and reflect, right? Because everybody's had a loss. Everybody's had a pain. Mm-hmm. Everybody's trying to find their peace. It's not, your peace gonna look different than my peace.
Sure.
So I wanted everybody to be able to say, hey, after reading that, I realized resentment is holding me back. After reading this, I realized abandonment was planted. Now I need to uproot it. I realized that this person took my innocence and I need to give it back to them. Mm-hmm. Like, so the lines is to write, because when you write it, you're getting it out of your system.
Sure.
All that stuff that we have covered up for years and years and years, like writing it helps birth it. It helps get it out of your system. So you start to get all that toxic stuff up out of your system, and everybody don't have to see it. And it's funny that you bring that up, because I had a lot of people read the book and it was like, I don't have enough room to write on these pages. So I went and created a journal to match the book, so they'll have more room to write, to get that stuff out. Yeah. And I have actually walked people through those things that triggered up in them when they was reading. Like, I've never been too busy for the people when they come back and say, hey, I was reading your book and this triggered. What do I need to do? So now we talk through it.
So now you actually become like a
life coach.
Like a life coach. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a therapist, but that's, you probably, providing a small bit of therapy to people as well. And again, it doesn't matter how it happens, right? So if it's done through my podcast, or if it's done through your book, or if it's done through a movie, TV show, whatever the case may be, the main thing is ensuring that our people can make it to the other side.
Right.
So we talked about your favorite chapter. What was the hardest chapter to write?
That probably was my hardest chapter too.
Okay. To talk about.
Because there was two parts. There was two parts that was hard to write, in the book that actually, that actually took me back to places I didn't want to revisit. That being one, the loss of my child. But the other one is because I was a daddy's girl. And when he left, that was hard for me to write. Especially the particular incident where in the book where he looked at me across the table. It took me probably until the last edit to not cry when I read that part of the story anymore. So that was probably one of the hardest parts for me to write, but it was so necessary because now I can tell the story without crying.
Correct.
Now I can tell the story without feeling any kind of way toward anyone. So,
and that was actually one of the first losses that you had to endure as a young child. Right. I think as early as 4.
No, actually, when he left, I was 2. But when that incident happened, I was 6.
6. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, we won't tell the masses the incident. We'll let them catch it. Let them catch it for themselves. So,
but I'm sure it's what a lot of us has experienced.
Absolutely, absolutely. It in our culture, it is so prevalent. You know what I mean? To where it's almost normal now. Yes, it's almost abnormal to grow up with 2 biological parents. Yeah. I feel like I'm blessed. I still have my parents. Right. But there's so many people that I know that they don't. They still have their parents, but they're not necessarily together. Right. Correct. So, so for me, when I went through that with my children's mother, it was devastating to me because I was like, I don't know what to do. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, what,
right.
like, you know, my kid's going to be, you know, seemingly illegitimate or,
right.
or whatever the case may be. And I had to really, really, really rely on God to kind of help, you know, bring me through that.
Right.
Right. Now they're, you know, full blown adults, and looking back, I think they had a great life, you know, a great, you know, young life, and they're still, you know, doing their thing. I was constantly in their life, you know,
right.
but, not coming from that world, you know, it's like, okay, that was my loss, so to speak, and my pain. You get what I'm saying? My personal pain. So what advice would you give to young people that are going through similar situations?
So let me say this before we move on, because people probably think, oh, she got molested. No, that wasn't it.
That wasn't the case. Okay. So now that we cleared that.
Yeah, because they'll be like, oh, so I don't need to read it because it probably was, you know, that same thing. No, it wasn't that.
No, get the book.
Oh, yes, get the book.
Get the book.
But the advice I would give to young people is, one thing I always say is I try to be the person I wish I had when I was a young adult. Because there's so many things that wasn't taught to me. There's so many things that wasn't told to me. There was so many things that was hidden from me. And it wasn't hidden on purpose, but in our culture, there's just certain things you don't talk about with your children.
Correct.
There's just certain things you don't do around your children. When grown people are having a conversation, your children are somewhere else, which I still believe in that. Like, I still have adult children that are very manable, and I ain't play the radio with them. But through writing this book, again, it started 7 years ago. I had young adult children. I had adolescent children, and I was able to understand what I wasn't giving them. So I started giving them transparency. I started giving them what they needed to be productive in this world. Like, hey, this is going to happen. It's going to hurt. Like, I never tried to stop them from living life. I would just always warn them with a metaphor, like, it's a wall right there, and if you keep going that way, you're going to bump into it.
Right. Yeah.
So what I would tell young people and even older people, talk. Because everybody needs to hear what you got to say.
Sure.
Whether you think it's something relevant or not, there's someone that needs to hear what you have to say. And to young people, listen. Because nobody's going to tell you anything that's going to hurt you.
Right.
You may not like it. You may not want to hear it. But I promise you it has some substance to it. And find someone that you can rely on. Like, build a community. It makes me cringe to watch these young adults now want to be like on top of the world. And it's like, no, baby, take your time and get to the top.
Sure.
Because it's lonely up there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, us, you know, we're in our mid 40s, you know, kind of like been there, done that, you know, and still kind of going through it, you know, in certain ways. So, yeah, it's like, slow down.
Right.
You know, I know what's out there on social media. I know what, you know, they make it big and bad and all this other kind of stuff. But yeah, slow it down just a little bit, because, you know, you need to enjoy your youth.
Absolutely.
You know, and, you know, for those that, you know, don't have children, or even if they do have children, but go live your life. You know what I mean? You only get one life. You know, as mid 40s, you know, we have now these aches and pains that we didn't have, you know, even 10 years ago. Right. Right. So I tell people all the time, man, go live your life. Like, enjoy life. And when I say live your life, but do it in a smart way. Right. But enjoy it. Right. Because you only get one, and you can't go back. Right. You know? So, okay. Talking about Shay Marginet as the author, what are 3 things that describe you?
I would say transparent. I would say compassionate. And I would say always seeking for understanding. And I like to explain my writer's name and why I chose it. because I'm comfortable with being called Shay, but my author's name is Shay _Marjane. And the reason I chose that name is because Shay is who I am, and the underscore represents the extension, and Marjane are my children. Marquavius, Jamarcus, Jaheem, Devondre, and Tanasia. And we call her Nay. So it's the extension of my children. So wherever I go, they go with me.
That's awesome.
So that's why.
And here it is. I'm thinking it's your middle name.
No.
And I'm pretty sure, hopefully I'm not the only one that thought that was your middle name. You know, in our culture, we don't necessarily divulge our middle names often.
Right.
And so honestly, when I read Shay Marjane, I thought, oh, that's a middle name.
No, that's
But I
children.
like that, you know, the way that you put that together. And like you said, everywhere that you walk now, everywhere that this book lands, everywhere that it's advertised is you.
Right.
And your kin people.
Me and my folk.
You and your folk. You're cheering.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. And so one of the things that you use, one of the words that you used to describe yourself was compassionate. Where does that come from?
So I grew into compassion because growing up as an angry person all the time, you hurt a lot of people. And I remember my mom telling me in my 20s, she was like, "You're so mean." She was like, "I'm going to buy you a tag that say evil, wicked, mean, and nasty." And when she said that, in the moment, I was like, I don't care. But as I got older and I started to think about that, she had to say that because I must have hurt her feelings or someone's feelings around me. And I know what it felt like to be hurt, and I didn't want to be the cause of anyone's hurt. So at 25, I started to shift that because hurt is not fun. Because I lived in her. I walked in her. I hid her. I carried her. And nobody knew because I always smiled.
Right.
Like when my mom read the book, she was like, I didn't know half that stuff. And I've been around you all your life. In an active parent. I said, I know. She said, you carried it well. She said, because some of that stuff I knew, if I knew that, I would have been in jail. And I say, I know that. That's why That's why I kept it from you. Right. But I say I grew into it, but I also believe that I was born with this sense of compassion because I never wanted people to hurt because I started to hurt at such a young age. But I also grew into anger because I didn't know what else to do with my emotions. So now, being that I'm on the other side of the healing journey starting, I know how to meet people where they are. Being now going through, even my undergrad is human services. So of course I learned a lot about the person. So going through that and then becoming a life coach, going through ministry, doing all of these things, it taught me how to be able to listen. It taught me how to seek for understanding before I judge somebody.
True.
Right? Like somebody could be having it. You never know what somebody is walking through. You never know what someone is going through. Like the pastor always said, you either just came through hell, in the middle of hell, or going through hell. Like, so it's always good to be compassionate because you might be the person that smiles that saves somebody's life.
That's right.
And it took me, like I said, it took me a little while, but at 25 is when that leaf started to turn over. And it gave me more patience for people. And when I got more patience for people, I was able to start understanding people and how everybody functions different and how everybody has something happening at some point or another. Even the people that you think got it all together, because everybody just swore I had it all together and I was falling all apart.
Sure.
So just examining myself has taught me how to be compassionate for others.
Yeah. And oftentimes we call that faking it till you make it.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And again, because this world is so competitive, so hard, so cruel, sometimes that is a coping skill in itself.
In the book, I call that mask because I love wearing masks. Like it was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I became a professional mask wearer.
And you really didn't have to tell your truth, even though you were living your truth every single day.
Right.
As you were going through that, through the battles and the struggles that were listed in the book, did you seek any help at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Counseling saved my life.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll tell anybody, counseling and therapy saved my life.
Wow.
Because I'll say this, I wanted to commit suicide several times. A couple times I tried it. It's in a book. And I remember going to counseling with my pastor, and I thank God for wise counsel, because as I was counseling with him, he said, you need another level of counseling. And then I started going to therapy, and then I was going to therapy, but it wasn't working for me. It wasn't working for me because I wasn't ready. Right. So I started going to counseling, to an inner healing counselor. So I needed to heal from the inside out, not from the outside in, and not from current stuff. Moving forward, I needed to heal from that 2-year-old stuff coming up, and then I can move forward. Right. So it was kind of frowned upon because I was like the first one in my family that said, I'm going to get some help. And again, it saved my life because it took me back to get all of that stuff, all that junk.
Sure. And that's it's a cultural thing, right?
Absolutely.
Because the first thing us as African Americans are going to say is, I'm not going to counseling. I'm not going to tell somebody what my issues are because now, I'm vulnerable. Or we may mask it and say, I'm not crazy. Okay. But we're still fighting demons. Right. You know what I mean? And I don't care who you are. Like you said, everybody's got something going on, no matter how small or large it is. There's nobody walking this earth, and especially in these days and times, it's not going through something. Okay. Right. So I'm glad that you stated that, because that's letting the world know, or helping the world know, that it's okay.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And anybody that broken, that's, willing to attempt to take their own life, clearly needs, some help. Right.
Let me say this though. Because with counseling, people, let me talk about me. I ain't gonna talk about people. Let me talk about me, because I know better when I talk about me. I know facts when I talk about me. Sure. When I was in counseling, when I first started, like, that was even a fight. And it was a fight because I didn't even want to be honest with my counselor. Right? So I'm going to counseling and I'm paying. Like, this ain't Medicaid, and I don't got nothing against Medicaid because I got it for all my children when I had to. But like, I'm paying a copay first when I was going to therapy. I'm paying my copay every week. Nothing is happening but because of me. And I started my inner healing counseling. This wasn't on my insurance, so I'm paying for counseling every week. Yeah. And God had to check me. God was like, you just gonna give away your money? And I was like, what do you mean? Like, me, now I'm fighting with God. Because what do you mean? I'm going to counseling like you told me to. He said, but until you're honest with yourself, there's nothing that's going to happen for you. I had to write my inner healing counselor, a letter of apology. After a month, maybe 2 months of going to counseling, apologizing because I was not completely honest with her. But I was afraid to be vulnerable. Right. Because that's what we're taught in our African community.
Yeah, we have to be strong. Community. We got to be strong. And especially if you're a woman, you got to be a strong woman. You can't, or even men, you can't show any kind of weaknesses. Right. None. Right. If you're weak, They always say somebody else will come and take your food.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And we got to get away from that. Again, if we just look at, what's happening in 2024.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. But when I wrote her that letter and she had me to read it to her, right? So when I wrote her that letter and I read it to her, when I was done, she said, now the work can begin.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that, it started. It got tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
But really what she was saying and what I hear you saying is you had to establish that trust between you and the counselor.
No, I had to establish that trust with me and me.
Okay.
Because I ain't trust me.
Okay.
All the little people that I had left behind, that 2-year-old, that 6-year-old, and that 12-year-old, and that 13-year-old, and that 16-year-old, and that 19, like I had to go get them and have them to start to trust me so I can be whole enough to trust me to trust her.
Okay.
So, yeah. It was work. It was work.
And approximately how long from start to finish?
I still go to counseling. Yes, okay. I keep my maintenance. I stopped for a couple of years, probably 2 years, toward the end of this book while I was finishing up this book because she said that I was good. But I felt myself experiencing not depression, because I wasn't depressed. I don't get depressed anymore. But I was like in this space, an unfamiliar space, right? And I was like, I need to go back to counseling. But I realized, because as a as a life coach, you are coaching, counseling. Some of that stuff you will pick up if you haven't covered yourself.
Sure.
So I was carrying other people's stuff. So that's when I realized I need to go back to counseling because I need maintenance.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
So we have the book out and clearly it's doing well. It's helping people. What would you say is next for you? How do you pivot from this into your next project?
Well, I'm always busy. I'm still doing a lot of stuff, but I will say this. I am writing 2 books. So I'm in the process of writing 2 books, a sequel to this book, because how it ends, everybody want to know what happens next. So
you just ain't gonna tell them to mind your business.
No, I'm not gonna tell them.
Or just say, look at me now.
No, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna tell my story. Because if I tell my story, it leaves no room for nobody else to tell it. So I am currently writing a sequel to this book, and it's called Living in the Peace I Found. And then I am writing another book called Be the Wife You Would Want to Marry. Because I learned a lot of stuff writing this book.
Yeah. So, wow. Okay. So sequel to this book,
Living in the Peace I Found.
Living in the peace that you found, and then being the wife
you would want to marry. So that one is going to be for women.
That's both deep.
Yeah.
That's both deep. As you're writing, so we talked about you having a coach or a therapist or however you want to, describe that person. Do you have any mentors?
I have mentors. I have a coach and I have a therapist.
Okay.
So I have I have 2 mentors. I have 2 coaches and I have 1 counselor. And that's my makeup.
That's your village.
Yeah.
Because as we all know, we always say it all the time, it takes a village to, we say raise a child, but everybody still needs some of those same resources to tap into. And then clearly, you still have your family and, church sisters and brothers, I'm sure that you rely upon, and obviously, to your husband. Yeah. And then now you said, I know you have a very, very strong, relationship with your children.
Yes.
I've seen that in action several times. So I know that, your support system is super strong. And again, kudos to you to being able to be vulnerable in that space with still, with those people. So yeah. We talked about your next book. Okay. And it being a sequel to Lost Pain and Finding Peace. If you were to bring it up to today's life, your life today, what would be the title of your current chapter in your life?
Oh, that's good. Probably bruised, but not defeated. Because I'm still walking through some stuff. So it would definitely be bruised, but not defeated.
Bruised, but not defeated. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that just kind of shows your creative spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So when I hear that, bruised, truly what that means is there's not a Band-Aid that's going to just cover it up. Because, a bruise is, sometimes it hurts for a little while. Right. Before it starts to heal.
Right. So, and bruises heal from the inside out.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Not quite sure if we touched on it, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. Tell me about your journey to becoming an author. What has and who has inspired you?
So, God has this funny thing with me, right? Like, whenever he wants me to do something, he put me in a company of people that's doing those things. And it's funny because when it was time to go back to college, I didn't want to go, but he put me in the area where people was going back to college. So I went back to college, of course, graduated. I graduated with honors, I must add.
Congratulations.
For my undergrad.
I didn't.
But, now that master's was, listen, we ain't gonna talk about the master's.
But you got it.
But I got it.
All right.
When I was writing my book, like I said, it started 7 years ago. And when we was working at the school together, I almost called his name. When we was working at the school together, and me and Shaquana became friends. And she somehow said she was writing her book, right? And I was like, I'm writing a book. And she was like, yeah. And I said, yes. So Shaquana wrote her book and finished her book and published her book. And I said,
you still writing?
I'm still writing. I'm still writing. Barely. Nah, it's like typing on a typewriter with one finger. Barely. And I was like, huh. So I was like, but her book ain't, she probably, cause she had recipes. So I'm like, she just wrote like a cookbook. So I'm reading her book and I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. So I was like, so it is okay to tell your story. So we went, she, like I said, she did her whole thing. She had the book signing and the round table and the this and the third. And I'm like, huh. So we get to the round table and her friend Stephanie was there, which is a publisher. And she has her own publishing company. And God said, that's your publisher. I was like, okay, whenever I write this book, like, okay, I always fight with God. Like, I don't anymore, but I used to.
I think that's the natural Christian walk.
Yeah, I was just, I was that child. And after the round table, I said to her, God told me you was my publisher. She said, well, what are we doing? I said, well, I started writing a book a few years ago. She said, well, let's get it done. And I still drug my feet for another year. And then it was like, okay, let's go. And that's what happened.
Talk to us. What is that book writing, from obviously penning, or typing, but what is that process like once you actually lock in with a publisher and all of that? Is that where all the legal stuff comes in? Like, what is that process like?
So my publisher is amazing. Like, I was trying to find another word, but she's my writing coach.
And what is her name?
Her name is Stephanie Alden.
Okay.
She's my writing coach. She was my sister. She was my friend. She is we actually bonded over this whole book
through this process.
Yeah, she taught me a lot of stuff, but that is where all the legal stuff come in, and they tell you what you can do and what you can't do and how to do and different things like that. And, they tell you what type of book, like your genre. They tell you, they ask those questions like, who are your target audience, different things like that. And through the process, and it's Cocoon to Wings Publishing, through the process, like, they literally walk you through the process.
That's good.
So that's why it wasn't as hard, even when I wanted to give up.
Yeah.
And didn't want to write and threw the book to the side because it was too hard to write.
Right.
We would have coaching sessions. When I had writer's block, we would have coaching sessions. We would have workshops. We had activities, to get me through writing this book. I'm going to tell you this funny part. The first time, when I finished the manuscript, I was like, okay, I'm done. And she sent it off to the editor. And when I got it back, it looked like a murder scene. I mean, every page. It was not one page that did not have a whole bunch of red on it. And I was like, I don't want to write this book. This is stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. And when I talked to the editor, she said, there's more in you. And I want it. And I was like, but this, and she was like, no, this part right here, tell me more. This part right here, go deeper. This part right. And it wasn't until I actually did the ugly cry in different parts that birthed this book.
Wow.
Because it was so surface.
So, you kind of think about it, like an athlete that's going through, and they feel like they're a great athlete. But the coach is constantly in their face telling them, push harder, push harder. We know you can push harder. We know, you got some more in you. Right. And if you watch that, especially as a parent, I've got children that are athletes. You kind of watch that and you're like, oh, but give them a break. Like, right. But, now seeing in hindsight, I mean, look what they have produced, right? Now you got this wonderful book, nicely done, being read nationwide, probably worldwide at this point. And, you're actually moving in people's lives. And so it makes all that work worth it. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So, that's awesome. That's a good part of knowing what it takes to be an author, because I'm sure, just like in everything, like, I'm not going to say anybody can write, but you can write. But having a professional look at it and actually, like you said, mark it up and give their opinion on it, that's something totally different.
With no feelings.
And I can understand what that probably felt like, because you thinking, hey, this is my story. I done did my thing. Yes. Turned it in, teacher. Yes. And the teacher done returned it back like,
yeah, go back and start over.
Give me a little bit more. Yeah. So, I mean, now that I mentioned that, you being a teacher, I'm sure now you've probably, used some of those, coercing skills. Yeah. Cause I had those types of teachers as well. But those are also the teachers that you remember. These will be the people that you remember. Right. Your publisher, your editor, and your life coaches and those types of things. So, are you an avid reader?
Well, I wouldn't say an avid reader because I'm so busy, but I'm always reading something.
You're always reading something. So yeah. that kind of leads me into the next question.
Okay.
What exactly are you reading now?
The book I am reading now is called Pigs in a Parlor.
Pigs in a Parlor. And is it fiction, nonfiction, self-help?
It is self-help.
Okay.
It is really helping me to determine, because it talks a lot about walking as a Christian, right? Mm-hmm. Because I am a believer. And it talks about how a lot of people talk about how you are demon possessed, but you can't be possessed when you are possessed, when you belong to the Lord, right? Mm-hmm. When you are a Christian, but there are spirits. And it talks about us needing deliverance and how we need to get delivered, like from different things, especially things that's in our bloodline that we don't think about when people say, oh, that's just how I am. No, there's something in you that you need to pull out.
Sure.
So that's what it, I want to make sure I have this right title, but that's what it's, Pigs in the Parlor.
Pigs in the Parlor. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to look into that.
Yeah. And, it's been really good. I've been like I said, only a couple of days. Mm-hmm. But it's been really good. The last book I read before that one was, which was not long ago. I have to look in my library on my Audible. So another great book is High Feet on High Places. That book is amazing.
Okay.
And do I not have it in here? The Bait of Satan was the book I read before I read this book.
The Bait of Satan. Wow.
Yes, which talk about offense and how we are easily offended and how offense can go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and we don't even realize it.
Or sometimes we do realize and then we just kind of ignore it.
Yeah, that's it.
So the book is entitled Loss, Pain, and Finding Peace. Where can we find the book?
So if you Google it, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. You can get it at Target, Walmart, pretty much anywhere books are sold.
Okay.
Most people have got it off of, you said it was on Apple.
It's actually on Apple Books as well.
On Apple Books. You can get it on a Kindle. A lot of people has got it off Amazon, or they have purchased it from me because they wanted their book signed, of course. But most of my books are a lot of people have purchased it off Amazon. If you go on Amazon, you'll see a lot of the reviews where people went and wrote reviews.
Awesome.
For the book. And like I said, it's been great reviews from old to young. My grandmother is 81 years old. And this is the very first book she read from cover to cover.
Wow. It's amazing. And so, hey, you never know what your grandkids are going to give you. And, even at the young age of 43, even you giving back to, I heard you say you gave back to your mom and you gave back to your grandmother. And that's phenomenal. So thank you again for joining me on today and telling us about your life, telling us about your book, being vulnerable. Thank you so much for that because, again, my whole goal is to help someone else. And I knew that when I read your story, I knew I wanted to invite you on the podcast. And I think I hit you up, when I first read it, I was like, oh yeah, this is it.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. I think at the time, you were in the middle of your 12-week
planned encounters.
Yeah. So, we had to wait a little bit, but I'm so grateful to God that we were able to actually sit down and get this done. So thank you so much. And I'll be sure to put all the links to your book down below. And you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. I look forward to doing
part two.
When we find the peace that I'm living.
Which hopefully it won't be 7 years from now.
Oh, no, it won't be 7 years from now. My publisher's not going for it.
She's not going for it. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Reflective Resonance Podcast. Your commitment to listening and watching our episodes means the world to us. That you're engagement that fuels our passion for creating meaningful content and exploring diverse topics. Please hit the subscribe button below and be sure to share us throughout your social networks. This has been another episode of the Reflective Resonance podcast, and we look forward to seeing you next time.